Call this meeting of the Common Council to order. Roll call, please.
Alderman Peachy.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Randall.
Here.
Lars.
Here.
Tully.
Here.
Kraus.
Here.
Horn.
Here.
Fire. Here.
Thank you. This time we'll entertain public participation. Anyone wishing to address the council may do so. We ask that you please come to the podium and state your name, address, and reason for appearing.
Mr. Mayor, could I just say,
Certainly.
I would like to compliment and commend the Public Works Department, Mr. Pino, and directing the Public Works Department. If you haven't had a chance to see the new parking lot completed, it's really well done. It really looks good. But even beyond that, he and his crew took out all the scrub bushes and trees from the riverbank all the way from the new loft apartment building to the Rock River Park, or the Rotary Park, and it looks fantastic. It's a total change down there, so I would like to compliment them. They did a great job.
Great.
And that was done with the Parks Department as well, taking that brush down.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is a huge improvement. Seeing no one else, we'll move on to resolution number 47, tonight's consent agenda. Alderman Tully, please.
Thank you, Mayor. City of Jefferson, resolution number 47. Be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Jefferson, Wisconsin, that the consent agenda for November 5th, 2019 is hereby adopted. A, we had vouchers payable for October 29 in the amounts of $730,354.96. Payroll summary for October 25th, 2019 in the amount of $159,228.39. B, council minutes from October 15, 2019 of the Common Council. And C, licenses as approved by the Regulatory Committee. Operators licenses, we had 3 tonight. Special Class B licenses, there were none. I would so move.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Byer. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of approval, please signify by saying aye as Sarah calls your name.
Alderman Miller.
Aye.
Randall.
Aye.
Lars.
Aye.
Tully.
Aye.
Kraus.
Aye.
Horn.
Aye.
Fire.
Aye.
Peachy.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you. Next, we move on to a presentation on the 2020 budget. City Administrator Freitag. We want all the details.
To the penny.
Actually, I'd just like to, not to jump in front of you here, but I do want to thank you and Tanya, our finance director, and certainly the members of the finance committee for the time and effort that they put into this and their consideration. It's a big process, and it's this what you see before, what we see before us here tonight is a result of their hard work. So,
Well, thank you very much, Mayor. You're going to get the real Reader's Digest version tonight. I'll have more to say about this 2 weeks from tonight. But anyway, I think you all know the drill, so we start our process to prepare a budget in summer. Usually by the fall, I get department head requests, and I take those requests and make it work in a document that goes ultimately up to the Finance Committee. They had their budget hearing, I think, about 3 weeks ago. And ultimately, the document that the council will be considering 2 weeks from tonight really is their recommendation for a fiscal year 2020 budget. So 2 weeks from tonight, following a public hearing, the council will be free to consider the budget if adopted. They'll also be setting the tax levy and the tax rate for 2020 as well that evening. So if you just turn the page, we always start our budget process by looking at the current fiscal year 2019 in this year's case, budget performance, and I would say in the city's main operating fund, its general fund. That's the fund we fund or finance most of the city's programs and services. I think there's probably a slight surplus by the time we get to the end of the year. Not a large one, but you know, $65,000, $70,000, I would think. At the end of this year, I would think our fund balance would stand at a little over $2 million. That's actually a little less than where we were this time last year, and that is because we took $200,000 of fund balance and we used that or put it towards the architectural services for design of the police department facility. So the most important pieces of information that I think you'll be interested in on the next page is the summary of the proposed tax levy. It's really the 2019 tax levy collected in 2020. So you can see here that if you go to the bottom of that matrix, the total, you'll see there is a tax levy of $33,550 that is proposed for next year. That results in a total 2020 levy of $4,506,575. That is about 0.8% increase over the 2018 levy that was collected in 2019. So there's a real small levy increase that's proposed in this budget, and I would say that the levy increase of $33,550 is approximately the maximum levy increase per current state budget law that we would be able to put in place. If you turn the page, you'll see the components that we use to calculate a property tax rate. So I'm going to go way down to the bottom where it says property tax levy, and if you follow that across, you'll see the levy that I just spoke of, $4,506,575. That is the proposed tax levy, and the rest of this are the components of determining the tax rate. So now if you go way up to the top where it says equalized value, and you look at 2019, and you have a nice several-year comparison of where we are, you will see the value of the City of Jefferson tax base. That's the $573,134,000 number. If you compare that to the previous year, you will see that there was a significant increase. And that tells us that, again, the real estate market in the city is pretty healthy. There was some newly constructed improvements in the city, but the vast majority of that increase, and it's about 7%, that's a lot year over year. That came from just existing property values just selling at basically a higher value than the previous year. And where it says 2019, that's as of January 1 of this year. The next column, we look at the value of the city's property and tax increment districts, and we had not quite a $2 million gain. That's good. Next, we subtract that value of our tax increment districts by the equalized value, and that is the third line where it says total equalized value reduced by TIDS. That's the $541,643,000 number. That is the equalized value of the city's tax base that we apportion the gross property tax rate over. But we, of course, tax on the assessed value of the community, not the equalized value. And so we know that, and this is a good number, we know the assessment ratio is not quite 97%, 96.93%. And when we apply that to the equalized value number, we get a total estimated assessed value, again, having been reduced by the value of our tax increment districts, of $524,997,788. When we apply the proposed levy to that tax base, we get a tax rate, And we know that tax rate will be about $8.58 per thousand of assessed valuation for the approaching new tax year. That is about a 34-cent decrease per thousand from the 2018 tax rate of $8.92. So really, the reason that tax rate is decreasing so significantly, there's a very small property tax levy increase, but you had a big increase in the assessed value of the community, basically. So you have more property to spread that levy over. The next slide is the total spending picture for the city of Jefferson that is proposed for next year. We use a system of fund accounting to fund all our operations. If you add up all those different funds, and on the next slide you'll see what those are, you will see a total 2020 all fund spending of $16,630,475. That is about a $2.6 million increase over the current year's all fund spending. That was the budget we put in place for this year about this time last year. And the reason for that is the city is undertaking a number of larger one-time capital expenditures that we'll talk a little bit about at the end. But if you turn the page, those are all the different funds that the city uses to fund its operations. The big one, of course, is the general fund. But if you were to look at the expenditures, the bottom half of that page, and you go down to the sanitary sewer fund and you compare the 2019 budget to the proposed 2020 budget, you will see a big jump in the numbers. That's because of a large capital improvement project that we anticipate undertaking next year. Similarly, if you look at the capital improvement and equipment replacement fund and you compare those 2 years, you'll see a big jump, and that's because we're undertaking a lot of expensive equipment replacement and capital improvement expenditures. The next page is the assumptions and kind of highlights slides. I will tell you that the proposed budget is really a constant service budget. We really hope to carry forward our existing levels of service into 2020 and to maintain those. The one big change to our programs and services, January 1, we are eliminating the city's paramedic intercept program that we run more on a county-wide basis. That's the program the city took over from Ford Healthcare 2 years ago. We had a 2-year funding commitment. Quite honestly, the level of activity no longer makes that financially practical to operate, and we lose the Ford Healthcare subsidy January 1, and so it's proposed to eliminate that service. That doesn't have any impact on our EMS services we provide to our city residents and also some of our township residents that we provide service to under contract, because we've upgraded to a paramedic level of service. That's our new license. With the exception of this, there are no new positions. There is one full-time parks maintenance position that is funded, but it's funded on a 6-month basis with the assumed hiring July 1. So we only have 6 months of salary, but we have pretty much the 12 months of benefit costs. So when we get into the next year's budget, or the 2021 budget, we'll have to find some money to pay for 12 months of salary for that position. And we assume that we will need that as Rock River Landing Park comes on board about the middle of next summer, and potentially the city looks or works forward towards establishing a conservancy, potentially, on the Meadow Springs Golf Course property that we'll talk a little bit about tonight. In terms of employee compensation, I do want to spend a little time. Because of levy limits, this is what we had to propose. Ultimately, this was what was approved by the Finance Committee. So the budget funds the new compensation plan that we talked about many, many months ago that Carlson Detman developed for us. It basically adjusts the minimums and maximums for each classification by 3%. But what the budget does is that while people in steps will get a 3% adjustment by virtue of putting the new structure in place, it doesn't allow them to move to a next step. Otherwise, that would provide for a wage increase of about 5.5% for people that are in steps. So they will get a 3% adjustment just by virtue of putting the new plan in place. That allows us to fund increases across the board, kind of about 2.5% for people that are out of steps. In addition, on tonight's agenda, moving out of the Finance Committee, we have a wage reopener tentative agreement for the second year of our collective bargaining agreement, wages only with the WPPA. That's at 2.5%. Those funds are inside the proposed budget to be able to implement those wage increases. In terms of health insurance, we'll be entering the second year of the Dean Healthcare Plan. That's the one that we paired with a health savings account option. It's a higher deductible plan. Inside here is deductible funding at the 2019 level that currently is in place for employees participating under that Dean Healthcare Savings Plan. No doubt, starting 2021, that level of deductible reimbursement, will have to walk back and be reduced, potentially significantly. But the funding level for that for next year is the same as it was for 2019. Just a few other quick things to mention. The next page, that is a classification of the city's authorized city positions. It should look a lot like the current years, but for the one parks maintenance position that is proposed to be added.
On the classification of the authorized city positions, you had mentioned that the paramedic 799 was going away.
Yes.
Those two positions remain, or how?
Nope, those remain. They're in service, and that's part of the city is increasing its license from for emergency technician level of service to paramedic level of service. The next slide, Bill. Just two quick things. There's an appropriation for approximately $55,000 that is a miscellaneous contingency. Those funds are not appropriated for any use, but they're really for emergency or unknown situations that might occur. And then in terms of expenditure restraint to protect that base, we're actually increasing our base by about $30,000. We don't expect to spend those monies, but it does protect the city's future expenditure restraint threshold from about $220,000 to about $250,000. That's a good thing to do. The next page. A quick snapshot of the city's general fund budget, which is our main general operating fund. You can compare 2019's expenses to proposed 2020's expenses. It's an increase of about $98,000 or 1.6%. That's a little higher because inside that number is $30 extra thousand that we don't expect to spend, but we're protecting our expenditure restraint base. So it actually is lower than that. We levy dollars in that general fund, and then we transfer those to other funds. The net transfer 2019 to 2020 actually decreases by about $42,000. The next page, more assumptions. There's no increase requested for water rates, no increase anticipated for power rates. There's no increase in stormwater user fee rates. No proposed increase for sanitary sewer rates, although I will say that the 2020 budget has a full 12 months of the new tiered rates for residential properties that the council put in place in 2019. So we have a full 12 months. And I think if Todd were here, he would say that's worked pretty well to smooth over wastewater rate increases. The budget does reflect the new refuse recycling collection fee that was put in place earlier this year. It assumes that will be implemented January 1 of 2021. With that exception, there really are no other significant charges for services or proposed user rate increases, although I think it would be fair to say that we are contemplating recommending a proposed increase to the city's building permit fee schedule. It's been quite a while since we've done that, but I think that probably would take place once the city finishes its comp plan, puts in place a new zoning ordinance. Somewhere towards the tail end of that, we will end up talking a little bit about that. And then lastly, the last series of slides is our capital improvement project and equipment replacement spending. Total spending for 2020 is proposed at over $3 million. That funds equipment replacement. It funds capital improvement projects, including street reconstruction, and it also includes dollars for our public facility maintenance activities. The funding sources for that fund come from a variety of different sources. One is the capital improvement project equipment replacement fund. Those are tax levy dollars at $710,000. We are borrowing some money tonight for some capital purposes. There's funding from the sanitary sewer fund, the stormwater utility fund, the library fund, as well as some other sources. And together they make up the last 2 pages of tonight's presentation. That is the 2020 component of the city's 5-year capital improvement plan. We talked about this a few meetings ago. I'm not going to get into it, but you know, some fairly significant projects we'll be undertaking next year. And Bill, you can put that one on, but in terms of equipment, there's a new ambulance, there's a new dump truck vehicle. We will be spending significant dollars to upgrade the city's communication systems for police, fire, and EMS, simply because the county is upgrading its countywide communication system. We all need to buy new equipment that makes it compatible with that system. Most communities in the county are going to be forced to upgrade. So there's some fairly significant equipment purchases. In addition, going back to the first page, there's approximately $300,000 for city street reconstruction purposes, $250,000 from the capital improvement fund, $50,000 from the stormwater fund, and then there's also money from the sanitary sewer fund to deal with manholes and infrastructure that might be associated with our street reconstruction. In addition, we hope to replaster the swimming pool, construct a new parks maintenance facility, and then we would hope to undertake a fairly large sanitary sewer project. That is the final leg of the Wilcox Interceptor project. That's pretty expensive, $850,000, but the last leg will put in place a new interceptor sewer because the existing is at capacity, and that serves a big portion of the north side of the community. So having said that, if I had to sum this up, I'd say there's a pretty small levy increase. It results in about a 34-cent per thousand decrease in the property tax rate for next year. Constant service budget, just really designed to keep our service levels where they're at this year. And then fairly significant capital project equipment replacement investment that's proposed. Probably maybe the largest or one of the largest since I've been here. So,
Any questions of Tim? Thank you, Tim.
you betcha.
Appreciate it. Move on to resolution number 48, a resolution authorizing the memorandum of understanding between the City of Jefferson and Jefferson Professional Police Association. Alderman Brandel, please.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor Opperman, fellow council members, citizens of Jefferson. City of Jefferson Resolution Number 48, authorizing memorandum of understanding between the City of Jefferson and Jefferson Professional Police Association. Whereas the City of Jefferson and the Wisconsin Professional Police Association, WPPA, have negotiated and approved a 2 collective bargaining agreement for the years 2019 and 2020, and whereas the second year of the contract included a contract reopener to negotiate and determine the wages for year 2020, and whereas the parties have reached a tentative memorandum of understanding agreement which would provide for an across-the-board wage increase equal to 2.5%, and whereas the MOU has been ratified by members of the WPPA bargaining unit, and whereas the Finance Committee is recommending approval of the MOU to the Common Council, and now therefore be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Jefferson, Wisconsin, that it herein approves and authorizes a MOU between the City of Jefferson and WPPA, which provides the members of the bargaining unit with an across-the-board wage increase equal to 2.5%. I so move.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Second. Second by Alderman Horn. In discussion?
This was unanimous at finance.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of approval, please signify by saying aye as Sarah calls your name.
Alderman Brandel.
Aye.
Myers.
Aye.
Tully.
Aye.
Kraus.
Aye.
Horn.
Aye.
Fire.
Aye.
Peachy.
Aye.
Miller.
It's unanimous. Thank you. Resolution number 49, a resolution authorizing Jefferson County and its County Highway Department to complete construction of North Elizabeth Avenue Extension Project. Alderman Kraus, please.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, fellow council members, and citizens of Jefferson. Resolution number 49, authorizing Jefferson County and its County Highway Department to complete construction of the North Elizabeth Avenue Extension Project. Whereas the consulting engineering firm R.A. Smith & Associates has completed design engineering for the extension of North Elizabeth Avenue from its current terminus to Perner Street. And whereas the city intends to begin construction of North Elizabeth Avenue during fall 2019 with completion scheduled for summer 2020. And whereas the extension of North Elizabeth Avenue will provide vehicle access to Rock River Landing Park. And whereas the City of Jefferson has previously awarded a contract to Forest Landscaping and Construction Incorporated to construct below grade the physical infrastructure that will serve Rock River Landing Park and the extension of North Elizabeth Avenue, including water, sanitary, sewer, and stormwater systems. And whereas city staff has reviewed options to extend North Elizabeth Avenue and determined that the most cost-effective means to construct the roadway is to contract with the Jefferson County and its County Highway Department. And whereas Jefferson County proposes to complete construction of North Elizabeth at an estimated cost of $209,000, including 10% contingency. And whereas scope of work for the project will include the installation of aggregate base, installation of asphalt pavement, and related tack coat, and installation of topsoil and seed upon completion adjacent to the road. Further, the cost estimate includes concrete work related to the road project, including curb and gutter, concrete walk, and driveway aprons. And whereas the final cost of the project billed by Jefferson County will relate to the actual costs incurred by the county. And whereas once complete, the North Elizabeth Avenue right-of-way will be dedicated by Jefferson County to the city of Jefferson. And whereas Jefferson County has agreed to the terms and conditions as set forth herein, and now therefore be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Jefferson, Wisconsin, that it hereby approves and authorizes city staff to contract with Jefferson County for services related to the construction of the North Elizabeth Avenue Extension Project, and further authorizes the city administrator to enter into any related agreement or contract subject to the review and consent of the city attorney. I would so move.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Brandel. And discussion. Any questions or comments?
Mayor, this was also unanimous at Finance.
Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments, all in favor of approving the resolution, please signify by saying aye. As Sarah calls her name, know if you're opposed.
Alderman Lars.
Aye.
Tully.
Aye.
Kraus.
Aye.
Horn.
Aye.
Fire.
Aye.
Peachy.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Randall.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you. Resolution number 50, a resolution authorizing declaring official intent to reimburse expenditures from the proceeds of borrowing. Alderman Peachy, please.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor Opperman, fellow council members, and citizens of Jefferson. City of Jefferson, Resolution number 50. Whereas the City of Jefferson, Jefferson County, Wisconsin, known as the issuer, plans to undertake projects in the city's tax incremental financing district number 5, which will include but not limited to acquisition of the Rock Bottom building, parking lot improvements, and installation of street and utility infrastructure. And whereas the City of Jefferson, Wisconsin, Jefferson County, the issuer also plans to issue debt to purchase capital equipment and finance street improvements. And whereas the issuer expects to finance the project on a long-term basis by issuing tax-exempt bonds or other tax-exempt obligations, collectively known as the bonds. Whereas because the bonds will not be issued prior to commencement of the project, the issuer must provide interim financing to cover costs of the project incurred prior to receipt of the proceeds of the bonds. And whereas the Jefferson City Council deems it to be necessary, desirable, and in the best interest of the issuer to advance monies from its funds on hand on an interim basis to pay the costs of the project until the bonds are issued. And now therefore be resolved by the governing body of the issuer that Section 1 expenditure of funds, the issuer shall make expenditures as needed from its funds on hand to pay the costs of the project until proceeds of the bonds become available. Number 2, section, declaration of official intent. The issuer hereby officially declares its intent under Treasury Regulation Section 1.150-2 to reimburse said expenditures with proceeds of the bonds, the principal amount of which is not expected to exceed $2,225,000. Section 3, unavailability of long-term funds. No funds for payments of the project from sources other than the bonds are, or are reasonably expected to be, reserved, allocated on a long-term basis, or otherwise set aside by the issuer pursuant to the budget or financial policies. Section 4, public availability of official intent resolution. The resolution shall be made available for public inspection at the office of the issuer's clerk within 30 days after its approval in compliance with applicable state law governing the availability of records of official acts, including subchapter 2 of chapter 19, and shall remain available for public inspection until the bonds are issued. And finally, section 5, effective date, this resolution shall be effective upon its adoption and approval. I would so move.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Kraus. And a discussion.
Can you just say a little bit? Or, I think.
Sure, Tim, can you provide a brief explanation of this?
Again, this is an easy one for me to explain. So all that does is allow the city to reimburse itself out of the proceeds of the bonds that we may and likely are to approve tonight for any funding that the city advanced from other sources to start projects. Oh, yeah, but that's the next one, Peggy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep, you're just, yeah, no problem.
I went ahead.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. All right, I just wanted to make sure that,
Nope.
because we do stuff and, without saying anything.
We do this resolution every time we have an issue. Just gives the city flexibility.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of approval, please signify by saying aye. As Sarah calls her name, no if you're opposed.
Alderman Tully.
Aye.
Kraus.
Aye.
Horn.
Aye.
Fire.
Aye.
Peachy.
Aye.
Miller. Randall.
Aye.
Sparks.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you. Resolution number 51, a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of $2,295,000 worth of general obligation promissory notes, Series 2019A. Alderman Horn, please.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, council members, and citizens of Jefferson. City of Jefferson, Resolution Number 51. Whereas on October 1st, 2019, the Common Council of the City of Jefferson, Jefferson County, Wisconsin, the city adopted a resolution, the set sale resolution, providing for the sale of general obligation promissory notes, Series 2019A, the notes for public purposes, including paying the cost of replacing an ambulance, constructing swimming pool improvements, constructing a parks maintenance storage facility, upgrading citywide communication networks, library improvements, acquisition of public works plow truck, and projects in tax incremental District 5, collectively the project. Whereas the Common Council hereby finds and determines that the project is within the city's power to undertake and therefore serves a public purpose as that term is defined in Section 67.04, Parent 1, Parent B of Wisconsin statutes. Whereas the city is authorized by the provisions of Section 67.12, Parent 12 Wisconsin statutes to borrow money and issue general obligation promissory notes for such public purposes. Whereas pursuant to set sale resolution, the city has directed Ellers and Associates Incorporated, Ellers, to take the steps necessary to sell the notes to pay the cost of the project. Whereas Ellers is in consultation with the officials of the city, prepared a notice of sale, a copy of which is attached hereto as Exhibit A and incorporated herein by this reference, setting forth the details of and the bid requirements for the notes and indicating that the notes would be offered for public sale on November 5th, 2019. Whereas the city clerk, in consultation with Ellers, caused a form of public notice of the sale to be published and/or announced, and caused the notice of sale to be distributed to potential bidders offering the notes for public sale on November 5th, 2019. Whereas the city has duly received bids for the notes as described on the bid tabulation attached hereto as Exhibit B and incorporated herein by the reference to bid tabulation. And whereas it has been determined by the bid proposal, the proposal submitted by the financial institution listed first on the bid tabulation fully complies with the bid requirements set forth in the notice of sale and is deemed to be the most advantageous to the city. Ellers has recommended that the city accept the proposal. A copy of said proposal submitted by the such institution purchaser is attached herein as Exhibit C and incorporated herein by this reference. Due to its length, in lieu of reading the complete text of this this resolution, a complete copy is on file at the office of the city clerk and is available for public inspection. I so move.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Lars. In discussion. Tim?
Okay. Really quickly, this morning was the sale of our general obligation notes. We looked to sell $2,295,000 worth of notes. It actually turned out to be a little less because they sold at an interest rate that was a little more attractive than we thought when we developed the original pro forma. So really, the opening bid for the issue size was decreased to $2,265,000, $30,000 less than we thought. The results are summarized in the bid tabulation on page 2 of our handout. We had 5 bidders. That's really pretty good for a community our size. The best bid, or the low bid, was Bankers Bank of Madison, Wisconsin, at a true interest rate of 1.81%. That's pretty attractive. I doubt that the city will ever refund these bonds because it gets a better interest rate. They're really good, but all the other bidders were, this is a pretty competitive sale, as you can tell. I won't take you through all Ellers and Associates handout. They couldn't be here tonight, so I'm pinch hitting. I know I'm not nearly as interesting as Dawn is, but on page 3,
Excuse me.
where it says 2019 and it's highlighted in yellow, that's reflects the final sales. If you go way to the bottom, you'll see it's $2,265,000. And if you compare that to the column next to it, where it says 2019 preliminary GO notes, those were the pre-sale pro forma that was put together, so you can see there's a savings in interest of about $30,000 over the 10-year life of the notes, simply because it the interest rate was better than we had anticipated. On the next page, this is one you'll be interested. I know you, Jim Horn, you will be interested in this. It's a picture of what happens in terms of impact of the city's debt service on our tax rate. And you'll remember we put this borrowing together to time with the payoff of some of the city's other existing debt. So we did this not wanting to create a negative impact on the city's property tax rate. So this is a summary with today's sale results of all the city's debt and its impact on the tax rate. So if you simply just start on the far left-hand column, look at years 2019 and 2020, follow it all the way across the table to the blue column in the right-hand margin, you can see that there's actually a little decrease, even though we're borrowing. There's a decrease in the city's tax rate just because of the timing of this issue with the payoff of some existing debt. And then lastly, a couple of pages further in, there's the credit opinion that Moody's Investor Service issued our bond rating, as it were, for the city of Jefferson, and they reaffirm the city's AA3 rating, which is really quite attractive, and one of the reasons we got the interest rate that we did. But I encourage you to read that because it's a nice summary of how an independent outside analyst views the city's financial position.
Any questions of Tim? Any questions or comments? Okay. This was reviewed by Finance.
It was unanimous.
Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments, all in favor of resolution number 51, please signify by saying aye. As Sarah calls your name, know if you're opposed.
Alderman Kraus.
Aye.
Horn.
Aye.
Fire.
Aye.
Peachy.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Randall.
Aye.
Flowers.
Aye.
Tully.
It's unanimous. Thank you. Good work, Tim, once again. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Resolution number 52, a resolution authorizing the option for the potential purchase of the former golf course Meadow Springs. Alderman Lars, please.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, fellow council members, citizens of Jefferson. City of Jefferson Resolution Number 52, authorizing an option to purchase an agreement with LCB LLC, previously known as the Jefferson Golf Management LLC, regarding the former Meadow Springs Golf Course property. Be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Jefferson, Wisconsin, that it herein authorize a option to purchase agreement between the City of Jefferson and LCB LLC for a period of 9 months, subject to terms and conditions specified in said agreement. I so move.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Brandel. Tim, give us a summary, please.
Actually, Chris, I'm going to rely on you to walk them through this, but I'll give you a little history of the discussion
I knew that was coming our way.
on this matter. Do you have that? So, I think that all of you know that the maintenance situation at the former 5 holes of Meadow Springs Golf Course has been a topic that's been before us for quite a few months now. I will generally tell you that our discussions first started a number of months ago when the city started to discussing the number of dead trees that are currently on spread over the 5 holes of the old golf course. There's approximately 50 plus dead and or diseased or dying trees, most ash, that ultimately the city issued an order directing the removal of those trees because it is a public nuisance and a safety hazard. Kind of as part of our discussions with the current owner of the golf course, we started talking about the long-term maintenance plans of the golf course. And as most of you know, that, the maintenance of the golf course is really such that the 5 holes has fallen into some degree of neglect. So as part of that discussion with the owners of the property, we started talking about, well, what if the city could option the property to look at alternatives for the potential repurposing or reuse of the golf course? And I would generally say, and Mayor, I'm going to ask you to comment on this, but there's the general belief that there's a small, very, very little likelihood that that will ever be a golf course again, simply because the amount of investment it would take. to recondition the greens and to likely replace the irrigation system. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes, and we have been in contact with, so just to clarify, when we're talking about the golf course here, this is the former Meadow Springs, the original plot of 9 holes, not to be confused with Jefferson Golf Course, which is our ongoing and open 13-hole course on the other side of Dewey Avenue. But we did have contact with members of the Keene Charitable Foundation that run the golf course and board members there. And just to make it clear that there was no interest on their part in expanding back to 18 holes. So that was one bit of due diligence that we did do.
So, the discussion that we largely had with the Madison Gulf folks is, would it be possible to sell approximately 35 acres with some improvements? There's the old clubhouse and a maintenance facility on the property, to the city at a below market value price. We did not have the property appraised. The equalized fair market value on the property tax bills is approximately $420,000. The option agreement that Chris will run you through, ultimately, if the city were to exercise it, calls for a purchase price of approximately $225,000. So the Madison Gulf people were interested in pursuing that, but to make that below market value sale meant that this will have to be, should it ever be exercised by the city, essentially conditioned on the city paying for a portion of the property, with the majority of the property being given to the city, and then they take a charitable write-off or contribution on their taxes. That's a simplistic summary of our discussions. So what we have up here is not the only alternative for repurposing the golf course. It's simply one alternative. So we would, if we do this deal, if it's approved by the council, we would want to take the next 9 months to do a large amount of due diligence to see what might be possible out there. One of the things we would look at is any part of that golf course, and again, it's about 35 acres, is it developable? And the answer might be possibly yes, subject to some investigation. That is generally the yellow shaded area property that typically would front along
South Dewey.
South Dewey. That is the most likely property to develop, simply because it's served with infrastructure, water and sewer. That's not 100% the case. There is a little gap of sewer service coverage on Dewey that would require an investment to extend sanitary sewer, but power, water, sewer, for the most part, is installed along Dewey. Of course, where you see that cul-de-sac, that would have to be installed if that were ever opened up. But it may be that that has the most potential for development. It's low in there. We'd have to take a look at it and the impact on groundwater. And then I know that some of you would prefer the city not get in the development business. We would want to chat with developers about the potential for finding one or more to develop this property. That would be, over the next 9 months. The other major thing that I can say is to make this work not only for the charitable contribution aspect of the arrangement, but also it's got to be not only good for the neighborhood, but good for the community, because this is a public investment of dollars. You know, there's got to be some larger community use of the property. The one use that we thought had potential for investigation is, could you take a majority of the property and could you make it a conservancy? And that generally is the green shaded area where perhaps you have something approximating a mile of hard surface path through a nature conservancy that would have to be planted largely with prairie grasses, low maintenance, some cutting of the buffer areas where the property abuts private property, primarily around the circle there that was developed by Madison Gulf, I don't know, 20 years or so ago, whenever that was. But that's one use that probably qualifies for that below market value sale to the city, but it's not the only one. But we thought that would be a really nice community improvement with multiple points of access to a paved trail. The other thing we would have to take a look at, what do we do with the clubhouse and the area around the clubhouse? Bill and I and the mayor were quickly through the building. It's probably a couple of months ago now. I don't want to tell you that is a tear down or a raise, but it is in clearly poor condition with some mold issues. Someone would be making a pretty substantial investment to bring that property back. But is that possible? I think that's a topic to explore, you know, during that 9-month option period. In addition, one thing that's really clear, and I think, Bill, you would probably agree, we need to understand how water passes through that site much more than we do now. That probably means having a hydrologist look at it or some professional experience assist us, because it seems clear, whether it's because of the poor maintenance, whether it's the development of the circle, whether it's just an abnormally high groundwater level, it's different how water passes through that site today. I would think we would want to have a better understanding, and it may be that alternatively the city might be able to help the drainage. Simply a conservancy would suck up water, no doubt. Bill has talked about, you know, could a portion of it be tiled, and could stormwater management or retention basins be located on the property to better facilitate drainage. So if we do this, there's no surety the city will exercise the option, but it does give us a 9-month due diligence period to look at this, as well as to have, no doubt, community and neighborhood meetings over the ultimate redevelopment plan for the property. Enough said for me. Chris, I'm going to have you maybe take them through the option agreement.
Actually, you did a pretty good job of it,
Well,
Mr. Freitag.
you're going to blind pig
But
gets in here
does
corn
everyone
now.
know what an option is? This is not a conveyance. It just gives us a property right to exercise the option to buy it according to these terms. And we, as Tim said, we have 9 months to do it. One thing, I hope Mr. Tully looked at this real carefully, because I was told by one of your co-workers that the title to the property is still in the name of Jefferson Golf Management LLC. So when I redid this for about the 5th time, I put both entities in it, on it, and have them signed so we can get this recorded. And I will be recording it once it is signed by all parties with the Register of Deeds. So they can't sell it from out from under us. The only negative thing that I can see is if we don't exercise the option, we're still on the hook for removing the 55 dead, dying, and diseased trees. And for every one of those 55 trees that we don't remove, we have to pay the sum of $806. And paragraph 1B shows how we got that figure. But otherwise, it's pretty straightforward.
Okay. Any more to add?
I don't think so.
And Tim, I got an email from the good people of Jefferson Golf Management, and they said they approved the form of it.
Oh, okay.
If the council does adopt this resolution, I would ask that they sign it first.
Yep.
Before we do.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, thank you. Thanks for the explanation. Open it up for questions and comments from the council.
Mayor, I can't support this. We talked earlier about having troubles with a constant service budget that we already have. So I don't feel that we have money to stick into this.
Okay. Anyone else?
I think this is a completely unique opportunity for the city for years and years to come. We've talked about this before, but how often does it happen that a city can get a hold of a large piece of land right in the middle of the city? I mean, it's a really unusual situation. It also takes care of several things. It may open up some housing, which we need, and it definitely helps the people who live in that circle area there who have been having nothing but trouble with the current management of the property holders. So I think it works on a bunch of levels, and I think not going ahead with this would probably be a mistake in the long run.
Thank you.
Would people be paying the Parks Department to use that pathway? Would people be paying the Parks Department to use that pathway for upkeep?
That hasn't been discussed, whether to charge a toll to use the public path. It wouldn't be consistent with anything else that we do presently. So I would venture to say no, it would be open to the public.
Do we have any cost associated with testing of the land, what we need to do? Find out if there's
At this point, I've not put a full list together. As far as soil borings, I would estimate those to be under the cost of $5,000 to be able to do borings out there. As far as other items that we'd be looking at, evaluation of existing soils, as far as the hydrology or anything like that on the site or how that system works, because of the fact that the option includes being provided all of the documents associated with existing infrastructure on the property. We haven't seen that, so we don't know exactly what information we're going to be provided yet. But beyond that, we will have to at least do a preliminary determination on where there's wetlands on the property, which we know there are on the northwest corner. And then just evaluation on the rest of the conservancy. So we would try to do as much of the due diligence in-house, but there may be some professional services that we seek on the on portions of the due diligence.
You mentioned, 5,000 for the boring. I mean, are we looking at tens of thousands to do testing or hundreds of thousands to do a testing on the land?
Certainly on the lower end of that.
Any other questions, comments?
If we do the $5,000 in the borings and we find that the land isn't because of the neglect and the, I'm gonna say that there's sprinklers and with the cul-de-sac that's in there, it makes now it not feasible to have as many lots there. Are wondering if the investment of, I'm concerned that, are we doing too much, are we investing too much to, I'm looking at that land and whether is that those many lots will be available. We're gonna end up removing those trees whether we purchase it. I mean, we would
Correct.
remove them whether we were, this
Mhm.
purchase came up or not, simply because we, as a city, we have to remove them because we know that this.
We're not voting to buy it tonight, we're voting on exercising the 9-month option and putting $5,000 to $10,000 into soil testing. This doesn't hinge on the sale even, this is just opening the 9-month option, so that I totally would support, and I think it's, again, valuable property, we think, we hope, right in the middle of town.
Can we do those testings at this time of year, or does that have to wait through the spring, or with that 9 months, I mean, that those,
Well, nothing would be approved until the option's exercised, and at that point, we would, there are times that soil borings can be done any time of the year. We would evaluate that, but that's why we went with the 9-month option, to be able to give us adequate time to be able to evaluate that.
I guess we gotta find out whether it's worth anything.
And there is no decision that has been made of any houses or any lots or of any paths or of anything. All we're doing is looking at this land and giving ourselves 9 months to consider it, options, possibles, that'll be worked out over the next 9 months. So it's as I say, this is just an option for us to have control of the land. If it works out, it works out. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. That's about how it works.
I think it's worth investigating.
Paul?
I would agree, I think we need to investigate this.
Anyone else? I'm gonna invite Erlene Ronkus here tonight. She's one of the neighbors that first brought to our attention the situation with the dead trees and raised some concerns. And I'd like to ask if you would like to offer any comments or feedback.
I can't speak for all the landowners around there, but our concerns, concerns about trees and maintenance, water problems, just got bigger and bigger. I called Dale and I talked to Tim probably in June about 3 of the trees in the back that could fall on my house if the wind came in the right direction. So that started this, and then a bunch of the neighbors found out that we were exploring this, and they got involved. So we have a lot of the neighbors came to a meeting in July with the Streets Committee and Bill talking about our concerns. So that's where it came from. We met yesterday with Bill and Tim and Dale to talk about this alternative. And the 3 of us were there, 3 property owners were there yesterday. And the 3 of us are very supportive of the direction that you're going with this. It would solve our issues with the trees. There's an attempt to deal with the issues with the weeds. There's a lot of noxious weeds in that property that are dropping seeds on our properties that we're trying to take care of. And then there's big water issues. There's cattails and standing water there that's never been there in the 11 years that we've lived there. So this would address a lot of our concerns. I at one point in my life was on the Dodge Jefferson Healthy Communities Partnership Board, and one of our initiatives was to look at how do we make our communities healthier. And I see this as one way that we could see a lot of people using that space. I live on the inside of the circle, and we see people walking around the center part of that often, walking their dogs. There's always somebody out there walking. I think this kind of thing would fit into the community needs, looking at healthy communities, and deal with our personal landowner problems with the trees and the water and the weeds. So I support what you're doing, and the 3 people that were there yesterday talking about it would support it. I would like to present this to the rest of the group that are following our activities, and we're very concerned, and this is a move in the positive direction. I support it strongly. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Erlene.
Mayor, I got a question. How would this affect, like, DNR? I mean, with the cattails and all that stuff that are growing there, I mean, or Bill?
Sure. Again, that's going to be all part of the investigation. Again, if you look at the area just off of where the old clubhouse was, there's a significant amount of cattails in that. And that's certainly an area that we're not looking at for development. The areas that we're looking at for potential development are those areas off of Dewey, which in general we're looking at because of the existing utilities. So from a standpoint of the conservancy area, those are things that we have to look at through the design. We'll have to evaluate any existing conditions that may exist that we have to design around. So that's going to be all part of the due diligence period to be able to determine if there are any issues such as wetlands or anything like that that would prevent a portion of this design, a portion of the development from happening, so that when either the 9-month period is up or we have a report to be able to present to the council, that we can make a determination on how much of the land is developable and if the project is feasible at that portion, at that point.
My question was more concerning of the property owners and stuff with, you know, the concerns with the weeds and the cattails that are growing. I mean, it's like, there's a possibility that the DNR may not allow us to do anything with that. Is that a potential?
I would say that's fairly unlikely.
Okay.
A lot of times what you end up happening is property that has been previously maintained and then it's lost its maintenance, sometimes has noxious weed issues, things like that. And in the case that maybe you do have a wetland or something that is formed because of lack of maintenance, there are things that you can work with the DNR on those. But again, I think those areas would be in areas that we would look at for the conservancy. So from that standpoint, I would hope that DNR would look at from that standpoint. But those are certainly conversations that we'll have to have.
Just my opinion, but I think the DNR would look very favorably on this. We're looking at some other outdoor recreation, passive recreation opportunities, such as applying to become a bird city. This is the kind of things they're looking for, is restoration of natural habitat. And it's valued very highly. I think it'd be valued very highly by the neighbors as well. Any other questions or comments? Okay. We will call the question then. All in favor of approval of going forward with the 9-month option, please signify by saying aye as Sarah calls her name. No if you're opposed.
Alderman Horn.
Aye.
Fire. Aye. Peachy.
Aye.
Miller.
Nay.
Randall.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Tully. Kraus.
1. Thank you. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session. A second pursuant to section 19.85, parent 1G, Wisconsin State Statutes to discuss litigation.
Aye, so moved. Second.
It's been moved, second by Alderman Lars. All in favor signify by saying aye. As Sarah calls her name, no fear opposed.
Alderwoman Byer.
Aye.
Peachy.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Randall.
Aye.
Lars.
Aye.
Tully.
Aye.
Kraus. Horn.
Thank you. We are adjourned to close session.